And first, Mazel Tov again, and thank you to Jody Hessel for your years of leadership in our Miami community and in the country. Your name and your deeds have always been synonymous with creating passion for Reform Judaism, and especially with our youth, thereby ensuring our future. So thank you. And what an honor it is to be here with you this evening. It's a little echoey. Last week, my mother-in-law, Batya, also known as Basya, also known as Asias, celebrated her 91st birthday. Thank you. Her name changed as many times as the places in which she lived changed names, and as many times as she moved from place to place. I call her by the name she used in Israel, Batya. She was 43 years old when she immigrated to Israel with her husband, Chaim, also known as Misha, also known as Michu, and my husband, Alex, also known as Sasha, also known as Shura. Their names changed too, and those were dependent also on where they lived and when, and also who was calling them. I'm sure Liera can relate to those. And when I look up the town where Asya was born, Mogilev Podolsk, there are Russian, Ukrainian, and Romanian iterations of its name. In 1931, when Batya was born, it was Ukraine, part of the Soviet Union. When the Germans and Romanians occupied Ukraine in 1941, it became part of the Romanian kingdom. She was then 10 years old. After we blew out the candles on her birthday cake last week, she said, "You know, I was 10 years old when the Nazis came. 10 is already a big girl. Do you think I don't remember? I remember everything, and I remember it every day." Natan Sharansky recently commented that growing up in Ukraine and living in the Soviet Union, the worst nation to be a part of was the Jewish nation. The word Jew in your identity papers meant that you would be officially discriminated against. And today, Ukraine has a Jewish president whose great-grandfather and great-uncles were killed during the Holocaust. Sharansky writes, "When I was growing up in Donetsk, Jew was the worst thing you could have in your papers. It was like being born with a disease, and many parents dreamed of how to bribe officers to write in anything else for their children. Today, when refugees move to the border, the best thing you can have in their ID is the word Jew, because the only country that sends official representatives there to get people and give them citizenship is Israel. 5,000 Ukrainian Jews have immigrated to Israel, making Aliyah since the war began. Another 6,000 have gone as refugees. Housing, food, education, medical care is being provided in Israel. Ukrainian and Russian-speaking social workers are being dispatched to help with absorption and the stress and the shock of being uprooted in wartime. A medical evacuation plane landed yesterday in Moldova and evacuated 13 seriously ill, elderly, and wounded to Israel. And we would think a luxury jet just for 13 people? Of course, because every single life is worth the entire world. This is why Israel exists. Israel is the eternal Jewish homeland. For Jews leaving Ukraine, Israel is now home. Friends, here we are. We just celebrated a beautiful Purim on Wednesday night and Thursday with Megillah readings and spiels. And yesterday morning, the 4th and 5th graders read the Megillah And this sanctuary overflowed with parents and children standing, sitting, they were everywhere. We read in the Megillah Mordechai's words to Esther, Al tidami v'nafshech lehimalet beit hamelech mikol haYehudim. Do not imagine that you, of all the Jews, will escape with your life by being in the king's palace. Ki'im hacharesh tacharishi ba'et hazot revach v'hatzala ya'amod laYehudim mimakom acher. Va'at uveit avicha tovedu umi yodea im le'et kazot higat l'malchut. On the contrary, he said words to her, if you keep silent in this crisis, relief and deliverance will come to the Jews from another quarter, while you and your father's house will perish. And who knows, perhaps you have attained to royal position for just such a crisis. Perhaps you were put in the palace just for this reason, to save people. The Midrash to the book of Esther warns that keeping silent and not performing good when you have the opportunity endangers one's claim to the Olam Haba, the world to come. It also endangers our humanity in this world right now. Friends, we are in the palace. We have the opportunity to do good. The contrast between our lives and the lives of our brothers and sisters in Ukraine is unfathomable. This week's Torah portion, Tzav, commands a thanksgiving offering. V'zot Torat zevach hashleimim asher yakriv la'Adonai. This is the ritual of the sacrifice of well-being that one may offer to Adonai, that offering to God which brings one closer to God. Im al todah yakrivenu v'hikriv, al zevach todah al chalot matzot bilulav v'shemen, etc., etc. One who offers it for thanksgiving shall offer together with the sacrifice of thanksgiving unleavened cakes with oil mixed in, unleavened wafers spread with oil, and cakes of choice flour with oil mixed in, well soaked. In other words, an abundance of food is to be offered and shared for this offering of thanksgiving. What is special about this thanksgiving offering? Ibn Ezra says it is offered because one wants to give thanks to God for escaping from some trouble. Rashi expands this idea. One brings a thanksgiving offering on account of a miraculous deliverance that was wrought for them, as being, for instance, one of those who have made a sea voyage, or traveled in the wilderness, or had been kept in prison, or had been sick and was now healed, all of whom are bound to offer thanksgiving. Since it is written in Psalms, let them offer thanksgiving to Adonai for God's goodness and for God's wonderful works to humanity. By being in this room at this hour celebrating Shabbat, we are the receivers of God's abundant goodness. We are commanded to give thanks by offering some of our abundance. People are being rescued from the devastation of war. We must give thanks. Israel exists as a place of refuge and hope. We must give thanks. Like Esther, we have the power to ease another's suffering. We must ease it. Oseh Shalom B'Romav. May God send peace, health, and well-being to the people of Ukraine, and may we be God's partners in bringing peace. Ken Yeh Ratzon. Amen.